Right now, your pocket holds every song ever recorded, every show ever made, more than you could get through in 100 lifetimes. And somehow, you are still bored. Here's a question nobody thinks to ask. What did ancient humans do when they got bored? Not medieval peasants, not Romans, not even the Egyptians. Go back further, 100,000 years, 200,000 years. No writing, no art, no music, no language as we would recognize it. Just people sitting in the dark with nothing they had to do. What they did in those empty hours built creativity, religion, and the machine running behind your eyes right now. But first, a stranger question. Back then, did boredom even exist? It sounds obvious that it did. It wasn't. For decades, researchers assumed early humans were too busy surviving to ever be bored. Every hour swallowed by hunting, foraging, fixing shelter. Then the fieldwork blew that up. In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Sahlins pulled together years of research on the Kung-san of the Kalahari, one of the last people still living close to the original human pattern. The numbers stunned everyone. They spent about 15 to 20 hours a week getting everything they needed to live, per week, not per day. The rest of their time went to resting, talking, sitting, doing nothing in particular. Sahlins gave them a name that flipped the whole story: the original affluent society. Their wealth was not things. It was time. More open, unclaimed time than almost any modern human will ever hold. So boredom was never the mystery. What it produced was, start with the simplest thing they did with all that time. They played. And that one fact carries more weight than it sounds. In 2010, archaeologist Francesco Derico examined a handful of shells from Blombos Cave in South Africa. 75,000 years old, each one pierced with a hole and stained with red ochre. Not tools, not weapons, not food, beads. Someone with time to kill sat down and made jewelry, drilling a shell with stone. No metal, no electricity, just repeated pressure and the risk of breaking it near the end could consume an entire afternoon. They did it anyway, because the alternative was staring at a wall. Necessity did not invent art, boredom did. And the evidence goes beyond beads. In 2018, researchers dated red marks in 3 Spanish caves, including a hand stencil and a ladder-shaped sign, to at least 64,000 years ago. That is 20,000 years before our species reached Europe. If the dates hold, the artist was not Homo sapiens. It was a Neanderthal, a different kind of human, alone in the dark, choosing to leave a mark that did nothing but exist. Boredom did not just move us. It may have moved them too. The same pattern shows up in music. In 2008, researchers digging in a cave in southern Germany lifted out a flute, carved from the wing bone of a vulture, 5 finger holes bored down its length, 40,000 years old. Before farming, before cities, before anything we would call civilization, someone sat down with a free afternoon and a bird bone and made music. Not because it fed anyone, because the silence was heavier than the effort. And that is what an unstimulated brain begins to do. It builds patterns of its own. Neuroscientist Daniel Levitin, who studies where music comes from, argues our gift for it is older than language itself. Long before we could build a sentence, we were already wired for rhythm and melody, because rhythm is pattern, and spotting patterns is what kept us alive. But boredom did not stop at art and music. It built something far bigger. It built imagination. Sit with this for a second. You cannot be bored without a sense of time. To feel bored, your brain has to notice that this moment is dragging. Picture a different one, and believe the future could be better than now. Boredom is the first flicker of a mind that can imagine what does not exist yet. That is why a dog waiting by the door is not bored. It is only waiting. It cannot picture the other lives it might be living. But a human by a fire 100,000 years ago with nothing in front of them can. And once a mind can wander, it wanders somewhere dangerous. What if tomorrow's hunt fails? What is that sound in the dark? What is past the mountain? Where do we go when we die? Every question religion has ever asked, every question philosophy has ever asked, every question science is still chasing, all of them opened the same way. The present went quiet and a mind walked off somewhere else. In 2013, psychologist Sandy Mann put it to the test. She gave people the dullest job she could invent, copying numbers out of a phone book, then measured their creativity the moment they finished. The bored ones crushed everyone else. Starved of input, the brain becomes its own supply. There is one more thing they did with those empty hours, and it mattered most of all. They talked, not about the hunt, not about food, not about who carried what. They told stories about each other. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, the man behind the famous finding that human groups naturally cap around 150 people, spent years logging what we actually say when nothing important is going on. His estimate, roughly 65% of all human conversation is gossip. Who did what? Who said what? What happened to someone you both know? It sounds like noise. It was the wiring of a society. Dunbar argues language did not evolve to coordinate hunts. It evolved to bond us. Before words, apes bonded by grooming, one body at a time. Language shattered that limit. Now a single voice could reach 3 people at once, or 10, a whole circle around a fire. You could bond with someone you had never touched over a story about someone who was not even there. Boredom invented gossip. Gossip invented society, so follow the chain. 75,000 years ago, a bored mind made a bead. 40,000 years ago, another made a flute. Around those ancient fires, unanswered questions became religion, science, and art. Today, the same wandering mind finds you awake at 2 in the morning, your phone resting on your chest. Which brings us to the part almost nobody says out loud. We have become very, very good at killing boredom. And it may be costing us the exact thing that made us. In 2014, psychologist Timothy Wilson left people alone in a bare room for 15 minutes with nothing but their own thoughts. They could also give themselves a painful electric shock. 67% of the men chose the shock rather than remain alone with their minds. We would rather feel pain than feel nothing, and there is a cost hiding in that. When outside stimulation falls away, the brain's default mode network becomes active, a system associated with creativity, self-reflection, and empathy. Empty time is not empty to the brain. It is where experience gets processed, connected, and turned into meaning. For 300,000 years, humans answered silence by making something from it. Then we built a rectangle of glass that answers every silence for us, instantly, endlessly, but you can still give your mind that silence. Every time you set the phone down, let the moment remain empty and resist the urge to fill it, you repeat what someone once did inside a cave. The same thing that made the bead, the same thing that carved the flute, the same thing that looked up at the stars and started asking why. Boredom never held us back. It is what made us human in the first place. And if you let it, really let it, it might still be making you.